Men, do you ever feel like you just can't get ahead? Like you're misunderstood? Like you have no one to talk to that truly hears you?
And women, are you often frustrated, hurt, and saddened in your relationships with the men in your life?
What if there were a community of like-minded men going through the same challenges that would support, hear, and understand what you're going through?
Working together in unison to create understanding, intimacy, and strong connections. That's the Way of the Illuminated Warrior.
Way of the Illuminated Warrior talk show is a forum of candid conversations for men and women about men. Being a man today is not always easy. Until now.
So all things are connected and affected by energy. Essentially, everything is energy. And my guest today is all about connecting people, places, and energy in a way that makes sense for all to benefit from. So energy ley lines, earth grids, vortexes, sacred spaces. These are some of the things among the topics that my guest is going to be discussing today. So Peter Champoux is an author, a teacher, an adventurer, and an energetic man. So thank you for joining me today, Peter. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, good, Waska. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, excellent. So I was looking
Pleasure.
at some of your stuff on your websites and all. You have a pretty rich a bed of information and knowledge. And I was looking at also just your connection with even stones. And at a young boy, you realized what your name meant. So let's start like kind of in the beginning, going back, like how you got so interested in connecting to energy and the earth and stones and places and how that served you.
Wow, it's been quite a ride. Yeah, I mentioned my name is Peter Champoux, French, although I'm an American mongrel. Yeah, and it means rock of the field, and that inspired me to look into other rocks in the field, and came across Stonehenge and places of that nature, the Great Pyramid, cathedral building, and it led me to become a stonemason. That working with rock, I think, informed me through. In anthroposophy, there's this idea that if you crack a rock open, then a gnome of knowledge is released. So I think a lot of teaching came from just working with the planetary membrane, the various rocks from around the planet that I had a mixed relationship with over 25 years. And yeah, so Sufi, my Sufi name is Ghani. I turned with the dervishes, did those mystical practices. I've been a student of comparative religion, anthropology, and it just kind of, I had so many interests that I never could focus on a particular career path or university study. So typically in that condition, you become a geographer. So, mixing all these various things in my life, that I've experienced, I've come up with what I call Gaiaography, which is the study of the living planet. So if the Earth is alive, how is it alive? Lovelock and Margulis did the Gaia hypothesis back in the 70s. And that their conclusion was that the Earth was a single-celled organism. So, there's this whole anthropomorphized conversation you could have around the planet, and, comparative chakra systems and things of that nature.
Interesting. If I could just interject one thing, because I know you've had experiences with indigenous elders and gatherings and things. We have similar friends like Pam and other folks who have an Orville Looking Horse, Chief Orville Looking Horse. So I don't know if you've experienced the innipi ceremony, what's better known as the sweat lodge ceremony.
Oh, sure.
Share your experiences with this. So we call the stones the grandfathers because they're ancient beings who the belief is that they have this wisdom. They've been around for time immemorial. They've experienced, they've taken in, they've shared, they've literally been hot, they've sweated with us. Also, what we call the one-legged praying people, the tree people, who are used also in this innipi, the sweat lodge ceremony, because we heat the rocks up with them. Also, you could argue that they're sentient, organic beings. So speak a little bit about that with your experience, how that relates to what you're saying with connecting with the earth and these objects, so to speak.
Well, you spoke of the grandfathers, and when you have a sweat lodge, you end up cracking those grandfathers open, and that releases the knowledge that's held in the rock within the container that is the dome structure, which is in sacred geometry and the temple geometry, it's in the shape of the sky, the great dome that covers all, the one truth that covers all. So I mean, it's a first class sacred space, if you will, patterned after the human body, which is a 5 proportioned being. So the 1 to 1.618 ratio, that is, we find it's kind of the God number. You find it in a lot of nature. That's implicit in any indigenous structure, because the human body is used to measure and shape these forms. So the height to width in a teepee is often 5 ratio, and it's the same with this innipi. And there's a rich tradition, and any tradition, it builds on all that's preceded it. So when you go into a sweat lodge, you're connecting with all those that have gone into a sweat lodge. If you go into a church or temple, you're connecting with all those who have done the same, and it kind of builds a consciousness field that we can all relate to. I haven't had a lot of experience with the innipi, but I've sweat some hours in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it just made me think, because it's has a lot to do with the elements, the stone people and the tree people, and connecting to the earth and all. So I figured you would relate to that. Let's dive into a little bit, because my first experience with energy ley lines was out in my first knowledge of it anyway was out in South Dakota. We were in what they call the Chesapa, the Sacred Black Hills. So they were connecting a medicine wheel that was constructed of stones and prayer ties, and just very intentionally connecting to other energy spots around the country. So for people who don't understand what energy ley lines are, can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, it's an anthropomorphized vision of the earth, where the earth has these meridians, if you will, bodily meridians, and those are ley lines, and they tend to be alignments of common cultural and natural features. So, like the Black Hills are connected with other hills, like Grand Tetons and Mount Shasta and such. So that's a ley line that I call the First Nations ley, that comes out of Boston and goes along the Mohawk Trail of Massachusetts, over through a bunch of Peace Pagodas and into New York State, through where the Onondaga Teradaho was, with the Central Fire of the Iroquois Confederacy, and Niagara Falls and the Lakes people, and on into the Dakota territories, and off into California. And you take that around the planet, and you see Hawaii and Australia and various places like that. There's also the more local lines that are energy lays that are dowsable. When I say dowsing, it's like water witching. Yeah. So we're the Black Hills is a vortex, if you will, a central point of one of these things I call earth rings, and they come off of an observation that there are these circular forms on the planet that have sacred sites at the center of them, and Black Hills is one of the major sacred sites of the planet. So that's like in the Gaia hypothesis, that's the integral membrane protein of the Earth cell. So it's really essential to have sacred ceremonies and medicine wheels and such at these sites as an interface between interplanet and outer galaxy conversations to create a geostasis on the planet. So it's, in my opinion, you should, you know, support ceremonialists
Sure.
who go there and sing, dance, sweat, and do the spiritual work to speak to planet and find out what it needs and be a conduit in that conversation. So a very
Yeah.
essential piece of human culture has been the cultivation of sacred sites. And indeed, like the church tried to take over Ireland, and they couldn't because the Irish pagans would keep going back to their old sacred sites.
Yeah.
So they say, we'll just put the
Yeah.
churches on the sacred sites.
Well,
So you have this the syncretism that happens, and yeah.
So you and I know because we've visited these sacred sites, which are places that ceremony has been done, which time immemorial, there's just been people who have come and gathered and prayed and had intentional ceremony. And so I say to people, like, it's easy to talk about, but when you've actually been to some of these places and experienced them, whether it's Stonehenge or it could be a river or a medicine wheel or any place, like anywhere in the United States or around the world, you really palpably, I anyway, and I'm sure you have also palpably feel that there's something special about these places. So for people who are listening, watching, who may not have experienced going to a sacred site or even knew or experienced what an energy ley line or a grid is, what would you say is the benefit of somebody, hey, go check it out for yourself and see what it looks like, see what it feels like, see what kind of energy you get from it? What would you impart?
Well, the consistent feeling that I get when I enter sacred sites is this kind of stillness and like a buzz and a glow. There's like this ethereal kind of presence that is quite palatable. And you can be just walking through the forest, and all of a sudden you're, oh wow, there's something here. Uh, and it's often marked. Indigenous cultures would mark it with a stone pile. But it's a sensitivity thing. It's cultivated after going to a number of sacred sites, and then your body is gets familiarized with what it's like to be in such spaces. They talk about going into crop circles and having these various feelings come over you, and it's a similar kind of thing. There's extra chi, there's extra life force, and you can stimulate this life force, this fountain, if you will. There's like a great glossary of terms on the British Society of Dowsers that describe all the various earth energy phenomena that are out there. The ley lines just being one of the few. The English made a proclamation that ley lines only exist in England, and it has to have these certain characteristics.
We'll be right back after this. Hey guys, this is Waska. Listen, if you're hearing my voice, there are no coincidences. Are you ready to get unblocked and take the next step forward, whether it's with relationship issues, finances, or just moving into the next phase to elevate yourself? Listen, bros, this is what I do. I'm here for you. Drop me an email at waska, that's WASKA, at illuminatedwarrior.com. We will work on this together and take you to the next step. I promise you'll be glad you did.
I've kind of tongue in cheek to honor the English.
Bloody well, right?
Bloody well, right. I refer to ley lines as ley lines, with LEI, like the flower lays that you get, because they're like that. They're like a series of it's like a string line with flowering forms all along it. So you get these blossomings of energy that happen. And when we acknowledge that and interact with it and come into sacred space along with it, there's this co-creative relationship that's spawned between humanity, who is really Earth. It's Earth consciousness, and the earth itself. So, it's like the earth really misses the ceremonies of the indigenous people.
Yeah.
They're still doing it, but not at the level they used to. And we're picking it up as, wannabes, I guess. Uh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it is part of the
yeah,
prophecy that non-native people will be brought into the fold to help
yeah,
mend that sacred hoop and either carry on these ways or assist the indigenous people to keep it going, because a lot of the native youth have become disenfranchised because of Western ways, with the expensive sneakers and all the media that just shows a different way of life, as averse to the traditional indigenous way of living, which has got a lot of value, um, more so today than probably ever before. Like having those traditional ways really benefits all of us. There's a lot of integrity and a lot of reverence that I think is missing without those ways. So I
oh
always
yeah,
encourage people. I mean, it's really touched my life and shaped and affected my life and my kids' lives, just being in ceremony with various indigenous elders, sitting with what we call wisdom keepers, being at these sacred sites, like taking in that energy and just, as we say, stopping the world and experiencing like something that you don't experience every day, and just really tapping into Mother Earth and Gaia and expanding consciousness in these ways. So I think it's very, very valuable. Speaking of which, you've written a number of very interesting, I haven't read them, but from what I perused, very, very valuable, knowledgeable books. So if you'd like to share a little bit about, what you're most proud about, what you've put out there and offered, would be great.
oh, thanks. Yeah, yeah. Back in '99, self-published a book called Gaia Matrix, which looked at New England as the centric form of a continent, a circular North American tectonic plate. It's centered in Western Massachusetts, and there's a landscape geometry. So, that's kind of my bag, is to delineate these landscape geometries and as a tool to interface in a modern way, in a more global way, with looking at the planet as a sacred space. And two other books, they're more or less addendums to the first one. I'm on my fourth now, writing about deadly ley lines. And that one kind of loops back to an article and a privileged position I had to witness the return of some sacred sites, or some sacred objects, from Barre, Massachusetts, back to the Lakota of Oglala and Cheyenne River reservations. And those objects were taken from the dead at Wounded Knee. So that there was this this ley line, this First Nations ley that I spoke of, and it's all written up in New Observations magazine, issue 142. And so it looks at that healing dynamic that took place. This happened over the last 2 years, completing last November, or no, 2 Novembers ago. Geez, time flies.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this whole piece of where the Indian Wars started in Massachusetts with the King Philip's War, and in that war, it was first acted out, that thing that Roosevelt said, that the only good Indian is a dead Indian. Where they just had these massacres all across New England and to rout out the Indian population. Then the final seal on the Indian Wars was Wounded Knee, the day the West was won. So these objects were plundered from the dead, ceremonial objects, and then brought back to this little museum in Massachusetts, in Barre, Massachusetts, and held there for 130 years. Kind of like it was a nasty thing to do, but at the same time, these objects were preserved for 130 years. And so at this time, there was this ceremonial opportunity where these these objects were returned back to the people, and they still don't know what to do with them. It's kind of like a hot potato. Some folks want to burn them, which was the traditional way. Other people want to hold on to them for the historical value of them.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're ghost shirts with bullet holes in them, this type of thing, and ceremonial pipes, and yeah. So it's like, so that was a little piece of writing that I'm quite proud of, and it looked at the Wounded Knee Memorial Site and the whole geometry of that and the pattern of that and the measure of it, and it's like the Masons are written all over it. And it was an act done against the ghost dance, which was a sovereign. That was, they celebrated a sovereign relationship between Wankantonka, God, or however you want to say it, and the human heart. And that's probably the most dangerous social movement that can be, because you're beyond the control of church and state when you're in sovereign relationship.
Well, when you think about it, Native Americans didn't have freedom of religious expression until 78, which is, it's pretty crazy if you think about it. So that ghost dance, for those who don't know, and the ghost shirt, that was part of that ceremony and that relationship with Wankantonka, with God, Creator. And it's interesting because I always think of Crazy Horse said, "The truth is bulletproof," and I always think of like the ghost dance, and obviously the wars and stuff, like, if they would be shot at, obviously this is not necessarily true, but like the ghost shirt would protect them from even bullets and stuff. But the statement, like, the truth is bulletproof, that's always stuck with me. It's something that Crazy Horse said, and my father would say, his mother said to him, like, tell the truth, it's the greatest lie, but I mean, lies are self-perpetuating. So, go with the truth, it is bulletproof, Yeah. So also, I know you are interested, and you advise on what we call like feng shui, like sacred placement, things that would help in the home, in business, like anywhere, placing objects, again, energetically, what feels good, what makes sense to bring in prosperity and flow and things like that. So would you like to share a little bit about that with the audience?
Yeah, there's probably others that can speak to that more succinctly than I. I've looked into it, I've studied it. That was one of I was more of the landscape end of things, like I think it's called Lo Mei in Chinese geomancy. And that's where you shouldn't have any straight lines, and you should always ensure the flow of chi. And there's this interplay between the dragon and the tiger. Dragon being the mountainous forms, and the tiger being the water forms below. So there's this interplay between these two flows, and there are certain places where are auspicious for the placement of pagodas, and there was an ancestor worship culture, and similar to Lakota, where they would place medicine wheels or something at these auspicious places where the flows come together, like the Bighorn medicine wheel, the various medicine wheels around Turtle Island. But in the home itself, it's you just want to have it nice and have the lines that don't interrupt the flow of chi through the area. Right now, we're in this troublesome place of where there's a very strong Hartman Curry grid that affects our bioelectric being. And if you have your regular chair you sit in, or the bed you sit in, at the crossing of these major Hartman Curry banker lines, they're called, it can create illness. So in my work, I dowse out where these geopathic zones might be, and suggest moving them to another, moving your bed or chair to another spot to avoid these things. There's also underground, there are all these phenomena, like I I mentioned, listed in the British Society of Dowsers website, glossary of terms that you need to take into account when assessing a house. And any place, wherever you are, there you are in a sacred space, in a sacred relationship. And I look towards the north, south, east, and west, above and below, and look at those contexts. What are the energies coming from these seven sacred directions that are impacting your constantly moving center of being, of relationship to the universe. And so you look at the geology. Is there a fault line right below you? Which is sending up these noxious energies from deep in the earth. Radioactive energies and such. Radon, looking for radon, and so it's it's a geographic perspective. It's a holistic perspective of a house. What is the house made of? Um, all those factors come into
Yeah.
consideration. And when it comes down to it, I just take out my dowsing rods and have it. All right, where's our problem here? And it leads me
Yeah.
to a spot, and
Mhm.
all right, where's the most detrimental energies and where's the most beneficial energies in any space? And so you try to accentuate the most beneficial, and
Yeah.
and illumine that which is not so great, and try to transform that into something that's more beneficial.
Yeah. Well, dowsing is a great tool. Most people don't dowse. I'll use a pendulum sometimes. But I think, which you may agree with this, just even using like tapping into our intuition. Because a lot of times, like I just purchased a new place, and I did the same thing. I'm looking at all of the different cardinal directions, and feeling what it is. So I'm upstairs, what's below me, and even I remember going way back, what's below me, like having like electrical things plugged in under the bed or behind my head, or having a refrigerator and a wall behind me actually really does make a difference. Like if you move, like you're saying, move the position of your bed, have it facing maybe to a south exposure and don't have electrical outlets behind you, I palpably feel a difference, So I think if we tap into our intuition with some of these things, like an old mentor of mine used to say, like, see how you feel. You don't even necessarily need
Mm.
scientific data on it. See how it makes you feel. Try something different. So I think there's a lot of value in that. Also tapping in our intuition, of course, using the tools as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's simple stuff, really.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So what exciting things are you working on now?
Well, I'm just completing my book on deadly ley lines. It's this phenomenon of there's kind of like these major geomantic corridors that I've identified, and have been introduced to me by various people, that I started looking at them, and I said, man, that there's a lot of war that happens along these lines. So I started to look at that, and so it's called Deadly Ley Lines, and of course, it's made to simulate fear. Fear sells, right? Still looking for a bestseller, but it was really it was a hard write, because you're seeing just the inhumanity that's out there. Like one Beijing lay going through China, it identified that 57 million or something like that died in China because of all the various purges, and then over through another one that goes through Europe, through the Battle of the Bulge and Waterloo, and all these, one conflict after another, the Franco-German border, always wars along and through Kosovo, and it's anchored on either end with the like human sacrifice. This ley line that goes across the pond is rooted down in Teotihuacan in Mexico City, and goes over to the temples of Baal in Cana. So, and then in between, you just have this, ancient Troy, for instance, is on this line. And, so there are all these iconic uh, events that have simulated war. So the idea is, they almost feel like chains on the planet, and by identifying them, by seeing how we've gotten stuck in this pattern of warfare, these are very linear forms that I kind of relate him to the chains of Marley, like in with Scrooge. He's like the ghost of Christmas past. He's
Yeah.
got these chains that are the chains of materialism.
Hmm.
And this planet has been so rife with
So how would you say, not
profit
to
through
interrupt,
suffering.
but I'm sure we all feel some energy heaviness and may not even understand what it is, and it could be due to things like this, like the energy ley lines. So how would you say, in your opinion, we could transmute that energy and bring back clarity and more clear flow of chi, as it were?
Simply through conscious awareness. It's the ignorance of these things that exist that really cause the problem. Um, so and it's in our hearts that allows that to happen. It's by uh, uh, being witness to this Holocaust. That this centuries and millennia of Holocaust. That we've imparted upon one another, and change one's heart. That's how it all happens. Uh, it's geez, it's such a sad history that this planet has had. With all the empires trying. It's I guess it's the struggle of free will. So it's like in free will we need to start being more empathetic to each other's condition in life, and try to change that and help that.
Yeah, amen to
That's
that.
how it's changed. And and ley lines are, over time, events happen, and then other events of the same nature are attracted to the same linear format.
Hmm.
So we have to insert a different program in those places, and that's done by through ceremony at sacred sites along these lines, usually the crossing lines of where these ley lines intersect.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. Well, until you actually experience it, it's just kind of like a concept. I mean, to me, it was. I mean, I didn't really understand sometimes why I felt certain ways in certain places until, I learned more about chi and prana and ley lines and grids and sacred spaces and sacred sites. And then it started to make sense, and finding out the history of what actually occurred at this space, that the atmosphere is holding on to that energy, so we can repeat it. And so it makes sense what you were saying, like these lines can have the same occurrences throughout history if we don't cleanse them, so to speak.
there was a incident a couple of years back where California was going into severe drought, losing all the water potential of shutting down the Central Valley growing machine out there. And so I was asked to help out with that, make it rain in California. And I identified all these ley lines and these implicit landscape geometries that make up California. It was the first time that was I'd really fully mapped out this, kind of like the state was a big question mark to me. What was going on there. But I had the privilege of working with some really consummate earth healers who took this information and used it to stimulate water, attract water. So these geometries I found, these landscape geometries, had were like Einstein gravity fields in the Einstein ring, which seen in a lot of celestial phenomena, terrestrial phenomena, and even in the human eye, you see that same pattern. And these were used to attract atmospheric rivers. That was the intention. And one of the sticking points that we found was Burning Man. It was at a very strategic point in all these geometries and ley lines, and so that, innocently, whatever, that was at this point where fire was celebrated at a time of the year where fire, August, was at its height. So for the 20 years that it was going on there are all these fires everywhere. It was like, so recognizing that and saying, okay, there's a problem here. What happened was that the Rain Man, or Burning Man, turned into Rain Man last time around.
Well, yeah, they flooded out. Yeah, but it is a desert, so it's hot and it's dry, and there are fires. Yeah, and they culminate by burning the effigy.
Right. Which is, the Burning Man was that's an ancient human sacrifice thing, where the wicker man, they pack it full of ne'er-do-wells and homosexuals and set it on fire and call it good. Terrible thing, terrible thing to celebrate. Yeah. So it's really just the whole effigy, burning of man. It's a whole aromantic, or kind of anti-human act. So there was a healing that needed to happen around that, and water is the great neutralizer of all things. Yeah. It's kind of like when there's blood on a ley line, repeated blood, it's kind of hard to get rid of. It's a memory that's held in place, and water is the only thing that neutralizes it. So
yeah. Water represents the sacred feminine and creation and transmutation, transformation. So that would make sense. Yeah. So thanks for sharing all this wonderful information and knowledge, Peter. So what is left unsaid that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I'd love to have the audience co-create with me. There's a lot of information on the web. Really, just Googling my name, you come up with all kinds of stuff, YouTube videos and various things like that. There's also purespiritwaters.org is another site you can visit, along with geometryofplace.com. Those are both websites I put together to try to explain this. It's like this is like an elephant in the darkened tent, and it takes all the wise guys to figure out what it is. It's a snake. So in geomancy, we're all feeling this great mystery. We're all feeling this great mystery, trying to figure it out, and it's like it's a group effort. We can't solve this all by ourselves or individually. It's like you have to come together as a consciousness field in order to understand what this elephant is. So so I'm doing my bit, trying to feel about in the dark to try to find some answers. But ultimately, I hope the great mystery is never solved.
It won't be. Don't worry.
No, okay.
I got word from on high. It's not going to be solved in this lifetime, anyway.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's a wonderful time to be being on the planet. I think there's some big changes afoot, and just try to keep out of fear.
Great point.
Keep it high.
Yeah, great point. Well, I really appreciate you joining me today. I'm going to post all your contact information so people could connect with you. We just touched upon a little bit of the knowledge and wisdom that Peter has to offer. So check out his offerings on his websites and all. And yeah, it's great, man. The great mystery. It's all one big puzzle. So thank you for putting some of those pieces in place for us. They're much appreciated.
You're welcome, and thank you for giving me this privilege to share this information.
All right, my friend. So as I always close the show, let's continue to illuminate our paths with loving kindness. Namaste.
Visit IlluminatedWarrior.com if you'd like to go deeper and find out more about what's available within the Illuminated Warrior Men's Transformational Community. Tune in next time for more candid conversations for men and women about men on the Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show. Until next time, illuminate your path with loving kindness.